Well, I'm on a pretty hectic angle. I think I've gone and almost put the pony on its side again. This time, I'm going to have done a little bit more damage. Oh, this is going to be a hectic recovery. Hey guys, I'm currently on the road and we're heading down to meet Matt Kinsella at his workshop because it's time to build some bar work for the old girl. She's done about 4 or 5 tough trips and I don't actually think there's a straight panel left on her, so she desperately needs some bar work, especially because we've got plenty more tough trips planned. We've got one of the toughest tracks in Australia to test the vehicle out, and we're entering the vehicle in a competition in a couple of weeks, so we've really got to get some bar work on her. Now, Matt runs Kinsella's Customs, custom fabrication shop that specialises in big builds and bar work like this as well, so I couldn't think of a better person to help get some bar work on the pony. So what, I'm pretty excited, eh? Let's get into it. This little LM106 has come a long way since it was bought, stock as a rock as part of last year's Bush Mechanic Challenge. In just 24 hours, we turned this $2.5 grand 4x into a weekend weapon that thrashed Daryl around the tracks of the Glass House, before building a canopy for it and taking it on the toughest tracks of Cape York and Fraser Island. Now, we're back in the shed with a $5 grand budget to turn the little Pony Lux into a budget tough truck capable of tackling the hardest tracks in Australia. So far, we've spent $3.5 grand and given the Luxie new suspension, some second-hand 33-inch tyres, a wider wheel track front and rear, reduction gears, and improved clearance with a low-profile crossmember. And now, it's time to build up the all-important bar work, which will really let us push the limits on the vehicle. Matt must be sick of rolling around on my shed floor, and I don't blame him. He's given us a bit of workshop space so we can get on with the build. And since his bread and butter is custom 4-drive fabrication, we're in good hands. Righto, so when it comes to building bar work, generally you use mild steel tube. This is 40 NB with a 3mm wall. For a little car like the Hilux, it's probably a little bit too big. Usually you'd use a slightly smaller tube, it just fits the profile of the vehicle a bit better, but obviously we're on a budget with this old girl and Matt's got a lot of this tube lying around, so we're actually going to be using this for the bar work. So when you are doing any welding on a vehicle, it is good practice to disconnect the negative off the battery just so you don't fry any electrics while you're welding. Now Matt has actually welded up some sliders for the Pony Lux before I got in because he's done plenty of LM106s in the past and knows the length the sliders need to be. Now he's setting about notching one end of the tube, which will be welded to the sliders, and then the other end will be welded to the frame. And while he's doing that, I'm getting onto the mounting plates. So I'm just about to grind the paint off the chassis and then we can weld these plates on. So this is 10mm plate. It's pretty thick, usually not something that you'd really use on a tourer, but on something that we're going to give a pretty hard time. It's nice and thick and will be nice and strong. It's worth noting that even though we are welding these plates onto the chassis, you still can engineer this. The sliders bolt to this plate, so you can still remove them, but it's just a nice solid mount. Righto, so I'm just lining up the mounts for the sliders on the chassis. So when we mount them to the chassis, we don't actually sit them flush and square and put vertical welds on the chassis. The reason for that is a vertical weld will essentially create a weak point in the chassis. So we just rotate the mount slightly so that it's on just slightly less than a 45, and then it'll be nice and strong. The sliders that Matt has put together for the Lux look absolutely mint. Kinsella's Customs has got their design down pat and can basically just change the length of the sliders to suit the vehicle, but also the mounts as well, because they're vehicle specific. How good is that? So we're just using the forklift to basically set the sliders roughly where they're going to be so we can tack the legs in place. If you're doing this at home, you'd be able to do it with chassis stands and stuff to line the sliders up, but it's quite a fiddly part of the build to get it right. So when you're lining your rock sliders up, you want to make sure, firstly, they're nice and centered on the vehicle, front and back. And also, you want to make sure you leave a little bit of a gap between the seam on the body because the body's on rubber mounts, obviously, so it's going to flex. And then if you are doing this on chassis stands, you can jack the car up and down or move the chassis stands up and down to get the sliders nice and level. Next up is cutting the mounting tubes to length and then tacking them in place on the slider plates. This is a point you want to make sure you get right because these will set the height of your sliders. So So take your time, measure twice and cut once, because if you get it wrong, you have to make new legs again. Righto, so this side's tacked in place with the legs. We also cut out all the legs for the other side as well. So now we just got to flip the vehicle around and sit the other rock slider in place, and then we can get it all tacked up and weld it in. Once you tack all the legs in place, you can run your eye over the sliders and make sure everything's sitting how you want it before you start welding them in properly. A handy tip is when you are tacking the legs in, make sure you tack them in a place where you can get a cutting wheel for a grinder, so if you need to change it, it's easy to remove. Tell you what, so much of building the pony has been rolling around on our backs and on a dirty shed floor. It is nice to be in a nice workshop with good gear and having a go at it. But that said, it's not to say you can't tackle a project like this in your shed at home still. Even with a basic MIG welder, something to bend tube, a basic tube bender, and then just something to hold the sliders in place, you can still give it a go. But it has been nice not rolling around on my back in the dirt for once. Before we finish these off on the vehicle, just got to take them off and weld the tops of the legs. Obviously, we couldn't get the welder onto it when they're on the vehicle, but it is good practice if you are building sliders to do as much as you can on the vehicle and then take them off and finish them off if you need to. Reason for that is it'll hold everything in place nicely and things won't move, and that means that when you bolt them back up, everything will fit the way it's supposed to. Fortunately, Matt's done all the important welding on the bottom, and I've just got to do the bits on the top because my weld zone is pretty, so no one will see them. Got to be happy with that. With all the welds done, we can now put the sliders back on the vehicle so we can start measuring up for the brush bars. We're only chucking a couple of bolts in the sliders just to hold them in place because I'll need to remove them for paint anyway. Then once I put them back on for the final time, I'll bolt them up properly. Tell you what, these are looking pretty sick and it'll let us push the pony that extra bit harder on some tougher tracks, but you don't always have to go for full custom bar work. If you've got a newer vehicle, for example, like Graham's D-Max, he's got some TJM bar work on his vehicle and it still lets him take it up some tougher tracks. But with an older vehicle like the Pony, it can be harder to get off-the-shelf parts, so custom's usually the way to go. Righto, so the sliders are on, which means next up it's time to do the front and rear scrubbies and the rear bar. So with the front scrub bars, we've actually got these. So a few of the guys at TJM saw the Pony and they were like, Jocko, mate, it's looking pretty rough. It's a bit dented and stuff. So they sent down some fiberglass flares that they make for the LM106. Now, we can't actually put these on yet because the guards are so dented that we want to fit them nicely, but we need to sit them in place so that we can get the scrub bars right so they clear the flares. So we're just going to sit them on for now. And then after we've done the comp with the Pony, might give her a bit of a birthday and put some new front guards on, and then we'll put some nice new flares on to cover the tyres properly. Next up, we're going to fix the Achilles heel of the Pony, and that's the rear departure angle. And that means giving the rear tub a quarter chop. While I'm lining up the cut with a laser level, Matt's getting on to building the front scrub bars. This is one of the more complex parts of the build, as there's a fair few angles to keep in mind with the tube, and you're bending the tube on multiple different axes as well. But Matt knows exactly what he's doing and soon has some sick looking scrubbies coming together. So I'm just about to hook into the rear quarter chop. So the main advantages of doing this is it gives you a much better departure angle in the back, particularly here. When we first took the Pony out, this was I think the first bit of panel damage I did on a rock on ball bearing track in the Glassy. So by cutting it, you get a much better departure angle, and also it'll allow us to put a nice tight tube rear bar on the bottom here just to protect the tub. So just with this first pass with the grinder, I've just done it very lightly, and what that does is it lets me focus more on following the line. I don't need to worry about cutting through the tub just yet, and it also means that when I come back for the second cut, it'll be much easier to cut because there's already a big divot there for the cutting wheel to follow, and then I should be able to get further in.
I've just finished up one of the brush bars for the Pony. Now, a lot of guys ask us how we get them off once we weld them to the bull bar and also the side step. So what we use is one of these little clamps. They hide just here, right behind the bull bar. Now, they have a top and bottom bolt, and they just come apart real easy, just like that. But when they're bolted up and painted, they're basically invisible. It gives you a super clean look, and they're also a lot stronger than the typical clamps you see that have the bolts through the bull bar and also through the brush bar itself.
Righto, so the quarter chop's pretty much done. I've just got to go through with a flappy disc on a grinder and just tidy up the cuts. And then we can put some pinch weld on it and start on the rear bar. It is worth noting though, if you are planning to do a quarter chop on pretty much any ute tub, a lot of the bracing for the tub is down here and I've just cut it out. So it does lose a bit of strength. Unfortunately, we've got the Shock Customs canopy up the top, which is giving it a bit of support, but it's worth keeping in mind if you are planning to do a quarter chop, your tub won't be as strong, but you'll get a way better departure angle.
With the scrub bars all bent up, it's time to weld them up to the bar and the sliders. And how good does that look? Particularly those tube clamps, it's a really nice finish and gives the bar a real seamless look as well.
Righto, so next up we're going to make a super basic tube rear bar for the back here. It's basically just going to be a single piece of tube that wraps around under the bottom of the quarter chop and then it will go into some rear brush bars over the tub. We were originally planning to just make some mounts to come out here and we're just going to weld the tube to it, but because we want to enter this vehicle in a comp later, we'll need rear recovery points. So Matt's had a good idea to actually get some mounts laser cut. He gets lots of mounts and stuff laser cut here, so they're nice and they bolt on. And basically they'll come out to here and then we'll just sit the tube in place and weld it up. So for now though, we're going to start making the tube rear bar, get it all nice and in place, and then we can draw up the mounts later.
All right, Jock, so the first step is centering the tube so we can mark our other bend.
Yeah.
Now, one thing a lot of guys struggle with is putting this bend in the right spot on the other side. So the easiest way to do it is do your first bend, position it here where you want it, then it's pretty easy. Just mark the center of your tailgate on the tube where you want it, measure back to your first bend, and then measure this way, and that's the point to start your other bend. If you do that, you'll end up with it nice and balanced at the right width you want. So, Jock, if you want to work it out for the guys on the camera,
Yep.
if I just measured from the center to here,
Yeah.
and it was 1427,
Oh,
what would the number be at this end only?
735.
No.
After getting Matt to double check my maths, the rear bar is coming together nicely. It's a simple addition, but it's going to make a huge difference to the capability of the vehicle, and once we remove that rear tow hitch, I reckon the pony will be pretty unstoppable.
I'll tell you what, this barwork is looking sick. It's been a massive effort for a day. Next up though, Matt's going to get the mounts for the rear bar cut, and then we've still got to do the rear scrub bars and stuff, so there's still a little bit more work to do. Then once it's all complete, I'm going to remove all the barwork and give it a Raptor coating, and I reckon that'll look really cool.
What do you guys reckon? Do you rate the new sliders? In total, we used about $300 worth of tube for the sliders, scrub bars and rear bar. And for the next step, I'm going to head back to the home shed to get on with painting.
Righto, so we got the pony back in my shed, picked it up from Matt's shop last night. Now, the barwork's all done, but as you can see, it's got a little bit of rust on it already, a bit of surface rust just because it's been sitting for a couple of days, which means I need to get it all off and prep it for a Raptor coating. We coated the bull bar in it, and I reckon it looks really good on barwork, so that's what we're gonna do the rest of the barwork in as well. Before I get the barwork off, I just wanted to show you what Matt finished up. So he's obviously done some rear scrub bars, which will protect the tub real nicely. Now, obviously they're still quite wide because remember, same with the front, we still want to put some nice flares on eventually. Then that comes down into that basic tube bar we made. There's a brace here, just out of 40 NB into the bracket on the back here. Now this is the bracket that Matt got laser cut. Now laser cutting is a really good option because it's inexpensive, and because you can measure it up and then draw it up, the bracketry will fit really nicely. It looks real, a bit more professional as well, and it also let us put a recovery point in the back here, and then the tube bar just sits on the top of it there. So I reckon this rear bar's come up a treat. I've still got to just tidy up where I did the quarter chop. I've got some pinch weld in the car that I'm just going to run along the bottom. So I'll give that a light sand and a paint, and then it should look really good. But for now, I've got to get all the barwork off. I'm using one of these Raptor sanding pads. It's real handy for tube because you can bend it around the tube while you sand. And I'm basically giving it a once over. You don't need to go back to bare metal, except for the areas that were already bare metal and there's rust on it now. So those areas I'm getting rid of all the rust. With everything else, I'm just giving it a light scuff. And then once it's all nice and how I want it, then I'll come through and degrease it all, and then I can start with the primer and then apply the Raptor. So there's a bit to do, but with any paint, and particularly with Raptor, it's in the prep work. If you spend the time on this step, the end result will be way better.
Next up, it's time for the Raptor coating. On the Bush Mechanic Challenge, we use these aerosol cans, but as this is a bigger job, I'm going to be using a spray gun with one of the 1 litre bottles. As you'll find, particularly if you're painting tube, you'll go through a fair bit of paint relatively quickly. That said, you could definitely use the cans to do the job, but you'll end up using a bit more paint to get it done. If you're painting with Raptor for the first time, don't be afraid to get yourself a basic air compressor and the spray gun you can get when you pick up Raptor. Air compressors are pretty cheap nowadays, and I found Raptor to be quite forgiving, so even for a bloke like me who's not a professional spray painter, you can still do a pretty good job outside your shed.
Righto, so I'm just finishing up the rear bar, and just to get the last little bits on the top, I've decided to use one of these. I found one more in the shed. They're real handy for smaller sections and touch-ups as well, and you can actually get a really nice texture out of them. So I'm just doing this last little section, and then we can let all the barwork dry before I put it back on.
Righto, so the barwork's all done. So now I've got to leave it to dry before I can finish off the job. And with the barwork back on, the pony's ready for its next challenge, and it's one of its biggest ones yet. We're going to see how she goes going up one of the hardest tracks in Australia. I tell you what, I'm pretty excited.
Just while I'm putting the barwork back on, I wanted to show you this unreal deal Oricom's got at the moment. Right now, you can get a complete communications package just in time for Easter. This whole setup you can get for just $299. Usually, everything here would be about $527, so you're saving a heap of cash. And check out what you get. You'll get one of these UHF 360s. Now, this is the exact same radio I got in the Pony. It's a little 5-watt in-car unit. Handy because the transceiver is really small, so you can tuck it out of the way and all the controls are on the mic. That'll also be paired with a 6.5 dBi antenna, which is a really good all-rounder, good for flat open areas and hilly terrain. And you'll also get one of these UHF 2500s. Now, this is a 2-watt handheld. It's awesome for spotting. It's got a light on it. It's also waterproof as well. As I said, this whole setup, $299 delivered to your door with free shipping anywhere in Australia. So if you need some new UHF gear just in time for Easter, make sure you jump on it quick, oricom.com.au.
For the pony's next challenge, we've come down to Yalwal on New South Wales South Coast, home to one of the most notorious four-wheel drive tracks in Australia. And with her new barwork done, the pony is looking like an absolute beast. And I reckon she's ready to give the track a run for its money. The track we're taking on today is none other than the infamous 6 stage, an insane climb up the side of a mountain that only the most modified four-wheel drives attempt. This track is full of massive rock gardens, deep ruts, and challenges like the infamous V-Rock and the final 6 stage. To take a budget rig up here on 33s is pretty wild, but I reckon we've got a fighting chance. I would like to stress though that this track is not for the faint-hearted. It's definitely not a beginner's track, and you need to make sure your vehicle is set up correctly with a winch and lockers and large tyres if you're going to give it a go. Make sure your vehicle's set up, you have appropriate spares, you're with other people in the convoy who know what they're doing, and you're in the right mindset to give it a go, because it's a track that can take no prisoners.
Well, mate, back out in the mighty pony again.
Yeah, it'd be good to give it another run. Now we've got some barwork.
Definitely, we can definitely push the vehicle just that little bit harder. The track lives up to that too, mate, 6 stage.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited.
Up ahead are our driving buddies for the day, and have a look at that rig.
Oh, stop it. That's not an LM106.
Yes, it is.
These legends are Gavin and Max, and you may have already spotted Max's sick comp truck in the background of Matt's workshop. It was originally a single cab LN106 Hilux, the same model as the Pony. It's running a 1UZ Toyota V8, coupled to that is an auto with reduction gears, and all around it's sitting on air shocks with a triangulated 4-link rear. Max is planning to compete in a bunch of competitions this year, including the one we're taking the Pony on in a couple of weeks.
How unreal is this thing? It's still an LM106, but I reckon it's going to have a bit of a hard time keeping up with the mighty Pony. But enough talking, it's time to drive 6 stage.
Pretty soon, we're lining up for the start of the track, which goes from mild to wild pretty quick, with the hardest challenges being the final 2 at the top. It's not uncommon for convoys to spend 16 hours trying to make it up this track, and we've got a huge task ahead of us for our little budget truck. To give you an idea, the first time I ever did it, we started it at 2 PM in the afternoon and got back to camp at 5 AM with breakages on every vehicle. The boys are up front and doing it in style, just as you'd expect for a rig custom built for tracks just like this.
What a rig.
Makes it look easy, mate.
Straight up, that was pretty intense, but
Yeah.
cool. How do you reckon the pony's gonna go?
Oh, I mean, Max made it look pretty easy, but we'll probably make it look easier.
There's one way to find out, mate. Let's do it, eh?
All right, do you want me up here for when you get stuck?
Oh yeah, probably.
Well done, mate. Perfect, mate. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah! What a rig! What a rig!
Well done.
How good's that?
The pony is absolutely eating up the bottom stages of 6 stage, and so far, we're keeping up with the comp truck.
Loves it, mate. What a little rig. Who needs high steer?
Yeah, I reckon.
He's up front.
Next up, things are getting a bit more serious with a rut that's been cut out by 37-inch plus tyres. You can see that clearance and flex is the key here, as the guys demonstrate up front, both of which the pony has in spades, eh?
I'm gonna try straddle this. This next section is going to be interesting. The thing about 6 stages, it just gets way harder as you get up. And this rut is deep, and this car is little.
Come to me a bit. Hold this way for now. Go back. It's just that little route. You got to stay against the wall a little bit longer.
Yep. You almost had it, eh?
Yeah.
This is super technical driving and not something you'd ever want to attempt without an experienced spotter. But it's also great practice for the competition Matt and I will be taking on in a few weeks in Queensland.
Righto, full lock. All right, a little bit right. Yeah, hold that.
Oh, no! No! Poor
Get
pony.
right.
Come on, old girl.
That's it,
Come on,
mate.
old girl. Come on, old girl. We're in. Yeah! What a rig! Oh, stop it.
Matt and I and our mates usually go up 6 stage in vehicles on 35s minimum, but the Pony Lux is doing an awesome job up this track.
Up! Up! Come on!
Yeah, the pony.
We should sell our utes once again.
Yeah, just buy cars on 33s.
This really goes to show that we've wasted our lives.
Yeah.
Up ahead, the challenge that 6 stage is known for really begins. This might look like an impassable rock garden, but there's a few lines through it ending with the infamous V-Rock. A massive step that takes pinpoint placement to make it up unscathed. Fall into the V and your rig will be in all sorts of trouble.
I reckon this is probably one of the toughest challenges you can drive in New South Wales. We'll put it out there. We're about to take a hilux that we've built up in my shed and in your shed. Up it. How do you reckon it'll go?
I mean, I think she's got a work cut out for her. These
time.
are pretty big rocks for 33.
Yeah, 100%, and a little hilux.
Yeah.
And it's also a challenge getting to this too, so we've still got plenty to do first.
Yeah, that rock garden isn't a small feat.
Yeah.
If we get to this, I'll be impressed.
Yeah, see how she goes, eh?
Yeah, righto, mate. Go jump in the seat and I'll start packing rocks.
Righto.
First up, it's Team Neverlift, and Max has picked an insane line through the middle of the rocks with Matt
Yeah, now
out
get
front
right.
to spot him.
Come to me. Nice.
Once he's through the rocks, Max lines up for V-Rock,
It's such a good car, eh?
which means bringing the rear of the vehicle around to get on a good angle to give it a go. You can see here he's almost attacking it on a 45-degree angle to the rock, which will give him a good line to get his front tyres up, and then he can pivot around.
Yep, that's enough. So now come to me. Now just come to us a little bit. Yeah.
Would you look at that? Max has taken the perfect line through V-Rock and made it look almost too easy. But that's anything but for a smaller vehicle like the Pony. Righto, Pony, the famous V-Rock. See how you go.
Yep. Now a little bit right. Now go. Well done, mate.
We're going to have to take our own line through the rock garden and are aiming for the right-hand line up the track. It's going to take perfect placement at every stage, and Matt has opted to get the Max tracks out early to make a few road bridges where we need them.
It's quite a big step for the poor little Pony 33, so rather than put 100 rocks here and Jock potentially shoot them all straight away, we're just going to use this. Hopefully he can just run straight up, and if he doesn't, it's quite easy to put back again and try again.
The Max tracks work perfectly here, and we've got the front tyres up on the next step, but the next section is pretty gnarly. The Pony is trying to climb up 2 steps at once here, and we don't exactly have much power for a quick bump up.
I just slip off.
I'm giving this a real crack, but I think it's a bit too much.
Nah.
And after a slight slip backwards, I've managed to add another battle scar to the Luxie. I reckon that rock's placed there on purpose, just to damage the tub.
You rolled back, it didn't.
So I think after a few attempts of packing, we're probably just gonna winch through this bit. Also, someone, it wasn't me, just decided to not hit the brakes quick enough and I rolled back into a rock. I think that one's on me. I think I've damaged the tub a little bit more.
Well, it's onto the winch for this one. We were pretty close though. I reckon with slightly bigger tyres, we would have made it.
Drive. Yeah, there you go. Yep.
Okay, time for V-Rock. And it's looking pretty big now that I'm parked at the bottom. With limited clearance, we only really get one crack at this, so placing the tyres perfectly is essential.
Right hand down a little bit. All right, drive. Now left hand down. Go. Ah, that'll do.
Yep. Close.
Yeah, more this way.
Yeah,
I'd slide it out.
Yeah.
It just takes film to get lock to lock in that.
Yeah, like, because the steering wheel was like this, I was like, where am I? Lucky we had some barwork though, eh? This door would have been fed.
Yep. So would this rear door.
Oh, well.
Get the winch.
Yeah, get the winch.
Tell you what, this is proper big truck country, and I reckon for a little Luxie on 33s, you know, she's giving it a red hot crack, so just got to winch through this bit. I'm pretty happy with that, I reckon. With the Pony hooked up, we start the steep winch over V-Rock. But it turns out we're not quite out of the woods yet.
Whoa! There goes the doors. There goes my window.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm right.
Well, that was a bit of a pucker moment. The right tyre slipped off the line there on the rock and sent the side of the car right into the bank. It's not quite a rollover, but I reckon it's pretty close. That's almost 2 for me.
That's all drive. Right hand down, mate. Right hand down.
How's the door? Oh, she'll buff out. I don't think we need aircon for the trip to Queensland now, Matt.
Jock, I think I discussed it with you. I was just going to be taking my car up.
Fair enough. Oh man, that is a big hit. Tell you what though, because I also landed on the barwork as well, if this wasn't there, I reckon the Pony would be almost a write-off. I reckon it was a big hit. Not out of it yet though, we've got one more insane section to go, and I reckon she's up for it still.
All right, mate, I think after that performance, it's my turn to have a go.
Look, I don't blame you. I think I just need to sit in the naughty corner for a bit.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah, the Pony. Yeah, that would not be a fun thing to hit.
She wants it. She wants it.
All right.
Yeah. What a rig. After that climb, we're up on the last and hardest challenge of 6 stage, a massive rock wall that stands between us and the finish.
Well, this is it, the final challenge of 6 stage. It's looking pretty chewed out, so it'll be interesting to see how we go. I reckon the crawler will probably walk up it, but the Pony might have a work cut out for her. Only one way to find out though. What do you reckon, boys?
Give it a crack.
Yeah.
Let's give it a go.
Okay.
Max and Gav are up first, trying out the right line up the climb.
too rough in this corner. Yeah, it's just your back left wheel. Yep.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, now mirror a little bit right and down, go.
The guys have had a few cracks at this, and it looks like the left-hand line is the go, but it's still super slippery. Those are 39-inch tyres running about 5 PSI, and they're still struggling.
Easy, easy, easy. You're up.
Oh, that gets a bloke excited, I tell you what. How good was that, hey? Power, auto, 39-inch tyres.
Doesn't get any easier than that.
Nah, pony's turn.
All right.
All right, we've got, I think, more power,
Bigger tyres.
bigger tyres, more lift, we're lighter,
And we've got drum brakes.
and we've got drum brakes.
The mirrors do not work in this
They
at
do
all.
not. Yeah, you're good. Oh, pivoty dog.
Yeah.
We're also going to go for the left-hand line, but the first challenge is to just get the tyres up onto it.
Bring your bum around, girl. There we go. That's it. Way steeper when you're in the car, isn't
Yeah, it is.
Definitely.
And it's at least, the good thing is the brakes work mint in this car.
They don't.
That's brakes.
Maybe pull the handbrake on a bit, see if it brings up the drums a bit.
Now we're going to be able to take it off. It's got all
Now it's
torque.
too much torque.
All 2 kilowatts.
Axle snapping power.
Am I still going to move over more?
Right down a bit.
Oh, Matt is feeling out for traction on the rock and getting a little bit of heat into the tyres. You know what? This might even be possible.
Can we take off from up here? All right, we're getting the max tracks.
Once again, we're going to use a combination of max tracks and rocks to give us a fighting chance of getting those tyres over the rock step. Okay, here we go.
You good, Jock?
Yep. Left hand down.
Is that a CV? It's not our fault. We broke a CV. We would have had it.
That's so close, man.
Oh, damn, I really thought we had that. The pony was inches from popping up that rock step, but unfortunately, her tired old CVs weren't quite able to handle the pressure. I think that's the pony telling us it's time to call it a day. But for a truck that's cost us less than 10 grand in total to buy and build up, I'm super impressed with how it's performed.
Good drive.
What a girl.
What a rig. She's come a long way since the Glasshouse Mountains with Daryl, eh?
Yeah. I'm so glad Sean bought this and not Daryl for us.
Yeah.
Well, that's 6 stage done and dusted. And it's time to get the pony back down to the shed for some TLC before its next challenge.
Well, mate, tell you what, that was a pretty intense track for the old pony. Definitely, you could see where all the mods helped.
Yeah, like building up slowly, but as a package, it was a weapon for what it is, a little budget
Definitely,
ute.
definitely. We have found its limit, though, I reckon.
Yes.
And a little bit of work to do before the comp, but I reckon she's got a little bit of fight left in her yet.
Yep, I think she's going to go really well after seeing her perform there today on like one of the hardest tracks I personally have ever done.
Yep, me
And
too.
I've done a fair few hard tracks,
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
like to think.
Pony performance, mate. She's
Yeah,
a rig.
that's us.
Yep.
What a rig.
She might be looking a bit battered and bruised, but the Pony Lux is more capable than ever. And I'm super pleased with the bar work, which we put to very good use today. And next up, we'll get ready to compete.
Well, boys, 6 stage done. That was awesome. Thank you so much for coming along. And tell you what, I reckon it definitely tested out the pony. We're not done yet. Next step for the pony and for this Luxie as well is we're going up to a competition in Queensland. But first things first, we've actually got to get her home, get her in the shed and give her a little bit of TLC, I reckon, before the big drive up to Queensland. If you like this episode and want to see how the pony goes in the next one, make sure you subscribe to the channel and also jump over to our Facebook and Instagram pages as well so you can see what we get up to. Thanks so much for watching and we'll catch you next time. Let's get the pony out of here, eh, boys?